Morning, friends. After a nice, lovely weekend of work, I am back here with you on this wonderful Monday. A little overcast here. Um, so, last time on Friday's live stream, I asked the wonderful question of what are your top five movies that you would take with you if deserted on a desert island? So I didn't get a lot of responses. I did get one from Joanne. Hi, Joanne. And so I figured I would ask some of the people around me in my everyday life. Um, I wasn't going to at first, but me and my fiance played this game after watching the Office episode with the pita that caught on fire, and Ryan started the fire. But they played Desert Island Movies in the parking lot. So, we had discussed this. Oh, hi, Joanne. So we discussed this, and, he rattled off a list and then changed it like 4 or 5 times, and we both kind of did. So I finally wound up with his top five, firm top five. Um, so for my fiance, Eric, his top five is The Hunt for Red October, which was number one every single time. It's quite interesting. Pulp Fiction, Empire Strikes Back, The Big Lebowski, and Shawshank Redemption. Not too shabby. It's a pretty good list of movies. Um, my dear friend Rishel, who lives 2 doors down, who's Eric's best friend, his was his first choice just made me laugh. It's very on the nose. He chose Castaway. It's interesting choice. Also, Shawshank Redemption, Spaceballs, Thousand Ways to Die in the West, and Pink Floyd's The Wall. Very eclectic grouping. Um, let's see. My best friend Mandy, who lives 2 doors down as well, that's Rishel's wife. She had a somewhat incomplete list, but the ones that were on it were Wizard of Oz was the first one. She is a massive fan. Goonies, Goodfellas. She mentioned a couple other ones, but I actually didn't jot those down by that time. We were just having fun discussing and having a conversation. The funnest ones were asking my kids. So I have two boys, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. So my 6-year-old, he started his list off with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which made me very, very proud. His second choice was Ghostbusters, also very proud of that choice. Then Onward, which is his current favorite because it shows two brothers like and their relationship. Scoob, he's a massive Scooby Doo fan, and Lego Batman, which was his favorite movie for quite a long time. So his brother, all right, the 8-year-old in our house, he chose Sonic, which is not surprising. He is the biggest Sonic fan I have ever met in my entire life, and has been since he was like 3 or 4. Then he chose Deadpool. I'm proud of that choice, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, he's 8, but that's what he picked. He picked Bill and Ted's Face the Music, the third one, which is an interesting choice, and then rounded it off with Marvel's Endgame. Pretty excellent choice as well. Although, as much as I absolutely love and adore the Marvel franchise, and I do, and I have loved almost every single movie that they have put out. However, I did have plot issues with Endgame, so it's kind of been bittersweet for me. But overall, like the acting and the story and stuff was pretty top notch. Just have holes with some of the holes in the logic I had issue with, but so that brings me to my lovely list of five, which it took me a while, and I had to really think about it because the first thing I thought about is if I'm on a desert island, it's pretty depressing, especially if I'm there by myself. So I need movies that are gonna make me happy, cheer me up. So my very first pick, absolute hard pick, will never change, is my favorite Christmas movie of all time, which is Die Hard. Yes, it's a Christmas movie. It happens at Christmas. There's a Christmas party. There's Christmas references. It is a Christmas movie. There's even a Christmas song in the movie. Next, Empire Strikes Back, because Star Wars. Have to have something in there from Star Wars, and that is by far, in my opinion, the best Star Wars that has been made. The Princess Bride. That's my romantic pick and a comedy pick, all in one. And I quote it regularly, so it's a pretty easy choice. Spaceballs. I have to share that one with Rishel, apparently. Um, I I have a deep love for all of those movies, but Spaceballs is probably my favorite. Young Frankenstein was excellent as well. Blazing Saddles, History of the World. Like, I could take his whole collection and be happy, but if I had to choose one, it was Spaceballs. And then my last choice is a little bit unorthodox, but like I said, it's I need movies that are going to make me laugh and make me happy. And this one not only makes me laugh every single time I've seen it, but I also do quote this one quite a bit as well. Me and my fiance, actually. And that's Step Brothers. It's a hilariously dumb comedy, but I love it so much. So those are my top 5 movies that I would take with me on if stranded on a desert island. Good fun. So I want everyone to chime in and send me your top 5 movies. I'm going to leave this one open, and if anyone else responds, please, please, please do. If anyone else responds, I will talk about them on my next live stream, which will hopefully be tomorrow. But I'll give you guys until, um, the end of the week or so. So my main topic for today is about research for my books. Just research and writing in general, and my thoughts on that. So I believe research is extremely important, no matter what kind of book that you're writing, because it needs to be grounded in some kind of reality. The more reality that you put into your book, the easier it will be to suspend the disbelief of the reader. So especially if you're writing about something extreme, it's an extreme topic, whether it's controversial or supernatural, you need to have as much truth in there as possible, because it makes it easier for the reader to jump logic to the step that you're at. So for my books, I did a ton of research, and I did mention this before, that I did research for years about vampiric myths and things like that, trying to figure out what my vampires were like. But even beyond that, I did further research on different parts of the book. So in the first book, there is a scene where she's speaking with a doctor at a lab about this blood sample. And he rattles off a bunch of information about DNA and DNA sequencing, and how mutations can happen within DNA. That is all real research. It's not just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Real research. And actually kind of feasible. The disease that I mentioned in there, thalassemia, also a very real disease. Did a lot of research on that as well. There are real allergies to sunlight that I reference. That's all based in fact. I went a little further than that, especially with just the atmosphere in the world in general, because it is a modern setting, and I was using a town or places that I actually lived in at the time when I first wrote Blood Lily. So I lived down in Madisonville, which is where part of the book takes place, and went to Knoxville quite a bit. So all the places that I mention in those books are real places. Duncan's house in Madisonville is the actual house that I sat in and wrote Blood Lily. That belongs to my best friend's parents, the McKelveys, and they live in Madisonville, Tennessee, in the little yellow house with the sloping terrain, where it's much bigger inside than it is outside, and the wood ceiling that comes down into the fireplace. It's all real, 100% real things. Even the hotel that they stayed at in Madisonville, the really creepy one, yep, that's a real place as well. I did not stay there because I didn't want to die, quite honestly, but it is a real place. Um, the big hotel in Knoxville that I burned down, which is the reason why this book will never be turned into an indie movie, because that scene is crucial to the storyline, and not many indie movies get to burn down an entire hotel or have the CGI capabilities of pretending to burn down an entire hotel. So that hotel, a real place as well. And one of the best inventions ever on the internet is searching for pictures. So when I want to use a hotel, I look for something that fits my criteria. Then I can actually like look at Google pictures of what the rooms look like, what the lobby looks like, so that I can use accurate descriptions when I'm writing about these places. So down to almost every detail, I use these real places to help suspend disbelief. Because if I'm writing about something that I can see, it's gonna come off as more realistic every time. So whether or not the reader realizes that I research all those places and that they are in fact real places, they'll still get that sense because how accurate I can be with the descriptions. I can describe the feel of a place. Also, Phipps Bend, which is a huge part of book one, a real place. They were building a nuclear reactor site there, and the funding just fell through, and that place has sat empty and abandoned for years, decades. It's still there. So they have like half built like nuclear reactor sites, and they have like some buildings and stuff that are all like run down, they're not used, they're abandoned, and perfect place for a bad guy's lair. So I always try to look for things like that. Also, for anyone that's read book two, a huge feature of book two, the thing that they're all looking for, is the Voyerich manuscript. This is a real thing that does live in the library that I do describe in book two, which also 100% real. You know, Google can show you cool pictures of pretty much anything. Um, so the manuscript is actually real. It's one of the oldest written manuscripts still in existence. And no one has ever solved the riddle of it. Like, no one has ever deciphered it. They have no idea what it's truly about. Like, there's drawings in there and stuff that kind of make you think maybe it's about herbology or the stars or planet alignments and stuff, but I mean, no one's certain exactly what it is. So having some kind of enigma that still exists out there was very cool for me to play with, and use it to my advantage. So in book two, when Cohen's talking about the history of this manuscript and how it's changed hands, also historical research. That is the true story of how the Voyerich manuscript wound up where it is. So I like to use as much historical fact as possible. I kind of got that from when I was younger and I read a lot of vampire novels and stuff, because I've always kind of been fascinated with the idea of them in various different aspects. I read a series that was very violent and a little off-putting at times, but it was a series by Michael Romke, and his vampires came from actual history, and he used real people from history to tell these stories. And when I was reading the book, they just sounded so genuine that I had to know. I had to know if they really existed. And I did research and found out that everything that he talked about were real things. Like he used as much historical fact as he could to blend into his world and make it real. I know I'm using that word a lot, real, but that's the trick, I think, the most over pretty much anything, is to suspend that disbelief that the reader's going to have automatically about things that can't exist or couldn't possibly exist. So I think research plays a very big role when it comes to writing about any subject. Even some of my other writings that I've done, and they're not published. Well, one was published. It was just a little short story. It was published in a catalog from my college. But I mean, even in those things, I use research too. Writing about personal things too. I mean, yes, it's coming from my head and they're my personal experiences, but the thing about personal experiences is that they can often be skewed. So I did journal a lot when I was younger and stuff like that. So I always look back at some of those old poems and journal entries and short stories and writings and stuff when I'm broaching subjects about things that I personally experienced. So it's a good habit. I strongly, firmly believe in it. Um, I know that how much research you do for writing depends on the kind of story that you're trying to tell, especially when it comes to it's kind of proportionate to how crazy your main idea is, honestly. If you're basing your book in a completely different world, um, then you have to do as much as possible, I think, to ground that other world in something that the reader relates to. So, like I said, research is key for me. I do a lot of it. If you're ever wondering if something from my book was real or made up, you can always ask me. I will tell you the truth. Probably 8 times out of 10, it's based on something I actually looked up. Another great resource for writers is the dictionary.com app, by the way. I use it on the thesaurus setting all the time, and I just totally tripped over that word. Um, so, another great resource. Um, it seems simple, but especially when you're writing about a certain topic, I can't count how many times I've looked up alternatives to the words like pain or cry or scared or frightened. Like, it kind of sums up what my books are about, I guess, by how much I have to look up alternatives to those words in particular. Um, so, one of the other things that I do research on is names. So, for my main characters, the names are all appropriate to their race or nationality, where they came from, how old they are. For Gregor, I always wanted his name to be Gregor, and that ties in with Scotland. So I knew that that was coming from there. Lilith's name, though, that was always my plan because that was my name of my character, and Lilith Adams is kind of a play on words. It's a little tongue in cheek because Lilith in Jewish mythology was Adam's first wife. So Lilith Adams, it's kind of funny. So her name's not really researched as much as it's my own little private joke. So Gregor had the same last name as her because this is the time period that he's in now, and that's the name he chose. And that's another thing is that with Gregor, he's lived well over 600 years that we know of, and so he had several different names, lots of different names over the years. So his wasn't as important that his modern name now match how he began because it would have changed multiple times. Otherwise, you couldn't hide in society. Um, with Cohen, his name kind of came to me, but it was kind of European, and that's what I was going for with Cohen. His first name is actually Andrew, for anyone that doesn't realize that. Cohen is his last name. Um, Felipe Alvarez is an actual Spanish heritage name, things like that. His wife Gloria as well. Um, so I do a lot of research when it comes to the main characters or main villains, things like that. Ashcroft Oric is a medieval Scottish name, as well as his son Clyde. Um, the fun part is how I name like the minor tiny characters that have very few parts or just come and go. They may even show up like once or twice. So the way that I come up with those names is I go onto Facebook, I go on my friends list, I pick a first name, and then I scroll through my friends list and pick a last name. That's pretty much how I name my characters. Once in a while, I'll actually name them after people, like full names. Um, in book two, there's an officer, Travis Tramble. is actually named after a friend of mine who was one of my test bunnies. Mariah is an interesting story. So when I first started writing Blood Lily, I was in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, had no friends, wasn't working, was waiting for college to start. So, I was just sitting in my basement and writing. Then I did get a job at Radio Shack, and I was working with this girl, Mariah. And she was very upbeat, very happy all the time. At the time, I was not. So, sometimes it kind of annoyed me, unfortunately, because she's a very sweet woman, very sweet woman. But, sometimes it was a little off putting how insanely happy she was. And Curtis Green, yes, you are in a random generator, and it probably will happen at some point. Because that's how I pick my random minor character names. Um, so I was working with this girl, Mariah, and she found out like I would take receipt paper whenever a thought would occur to me and a pen, and I would write notes on the back of the receipt paper on things I wanted to do in the book. I had tons of this receipt paper, by the way. I probably owe Radio Shack like a couple $100 in receipt paper. But she asked me many times what I was doing, and I told her finally that these are notes for the book that I'm writing. Oh, I want to be in your book. Can I be in your book, please, please, please? I want to be the character in your book. I want to be a character in your book. Well, at that point, there was only one main character, which was Lilith Adams, which was named, and that's it. It was never going to be anything else. And there really weren't any other female characters. Like Gloria, it wouldn't have fit, so Gloria's name had to stay the same. So the the only thing I could do was name her after Lilith's cousin, Mariah. That's who it became. And originally, as a joke, her husband's name was the name of our store manager at the time, who was awful, and we all hated him very, very much. He was just god awful. And as a joke, I named her husband after him. And she found out about that and got mad. And she's like, no, 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 no. I want to pick my husband's name. So she picked Malachi. I conceded to that because, unfortunately, unbeknownst to her until much, much later, the only scene her character was going to have in the book was when Lilith is investigating her horribly mangled body. She wasn't too happy with the result of that. She wasn't too thrilled to be the dead body in the book. But, I mean, that was the only part that I had to give her, and I did as she requested. She wanted to be named after a character in the book. So, that's my solution. So it's always kind of a fond, funny memory for me to look back at that anytime I see those names, which is quite a bit in book 1. The name does make an appearance in book 2 as well, and will be mentioned at least in book 3. As Lilith tends to have night terrors. So the interesting thing that I wanted to add with that character is for readers to see exactly how traumatized she really was by everything that happened as it progressed. The power of an author, absolutely. I use that power very, very efficiently. I don't forget. So there are people that are named in my books as revenge. Especially when it comes to book 3, that will happen yet again. So always be careful what you say around me because I am an author and I will use it. I actually have used stories that my fiance has told me in books. Mostly book 3 because that's the one I'm writing right now. He tells this story about how he went out with some friends and was drinking stuffed olive martinis. And at one point, he was intoxicated enough to ask for just a stuffed martini. And the waitress laughed at him so hard for a very long time. So cute little stories like that I'll use. He has a couple little sayings that pop up here and there too. So I do get a lot from real life. Most of the wit and stuff between Lilith and Chance, that's not necessarily from real life. It's just kind of pops in my head. I have a very clear vision of how they interact with each other on kind of fun level. And me and my fiance are very similar to that. Like we do joke around with each other quite a bit. Um, so yeah, names. Some are researched, some are revenge, some are randomly picked from Facebook. So it's kind of a nice little blend there. So my comes to my question of the day for today. So my question of the day, besides wanting to know your top 5 movies for the desert island, because I do actually want to see some results on that. It's a fascinating window into what's important in someone's life, really, what movies they pick. I might eventually do one about TV shows because we were talking about that too the other night. And TV shows would be difficult because some people are just going to pick for bulk. And if you try to just pick seasons, I would wind up with probably like Stranger Things and 4 seasons of The Office. So, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to formulate that one yet. I'll figure that out. But so my question for today, because I want to get you guys thinking. I want to get you motivated to do other things. So I want to know, what is the one thing that you've always wanted to do but have never done? And I'll try to think up what my answer would be to that. I have a couple ideas. But so that's my question of the day. So as a huge favor, I ask that you guys go onto YouTube and like my channel. When I'm done with these videos, I post them up on YouTube as well, so people can find me there. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't found a way to like immediately upload all my videos across platforms. So I've tried to really like get out there. I post links to Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Lilith's Apple, which was my old business name. For artwork and stuff was Lilith's Apple Studios. Um, on Instagram, it's Jenny Allen Books. On YouTube, it is also Jenny Allen Books, just like it is here on Facebook. So definitely go check them out. Like them, share them. I hope to have some really good discussions about writing and just life in general as well. I get a lot out of these live broadcasts, even if no one watches. It's a lot of fun, and I do enjoy it a lot, just sharing my thoughts on things. So definitely check them out, share them, and I will see you guys probably tomorrow afternoon. I'll try and do another one. I think tomorrow I was planning on talking about some of the hardest scenes for me to write. And there's definitely different answers to that question depending on what you consider hard for me to write. Like some are emotionally hard, some are actually just physically tasking, and some are just it's hard to keep your stomach when you're writing some of them. I don't laugh. I have typed through nausea. I've typed through tears. Typed through laughter. So I'll be talking about those scenes, some of the most important scenes that were the hardest for me to actually write. If you guys have any other questions for me, definitely hit me up. I'm always interested in hearing from you guys and what you guys have to say. So let me know, and I will see you guys tomorrow, probably around 1 p.m. Seems to be a good time. And you guys have a great day.